Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Lateral Property Management Podcast. I'm Ethan Lieber, the CEO of Lateral, and I'm here with our guest today, Bob Preston. Bob is president of North County Property Management Group in San Diego, and we're going to be talking about sharpening your competitive edge in a large market. And there's no better person to talk about this with than Bob. North County Property Group has been named the best property management company in San Diego by the San Diego Business Journal for the past 5 years in a row. North County Property Group also averages on Google 4.8 out of 5 stars, which for any management company is unbelievable. That almost sounds magical. And Bob also runs a podcast called Property Management Brainstorm. So if you like what you're hearing from Bob, go check out his podcast there. Well, let's go ahead and dive into how North County Property Group has achieved all their success. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ethan, thanks so much for having me. We were trying to remember when we talked last. I think it was when you were on Property Management Brainstorm. You were one of my guests. So
that's right.
That. And then we actually met face-to-face at Cal NARPM. And before the episode here started, I was joking around, letting you know that I've taken the role as president of Cal NARPM. So that's pretty cool. So anybody out there listening from California, please, we want you in Cal NARPM. And by the way, I just got back from vacation. So if I'm a little spunkier than normal, hey, you're going to have to give me a break on that one. But anyway, so yeah, hey, California property managers, we want you in Cal NARPM. We have a great conference planned, either virtual or live in March, one way or another. And yeah, it's all good. So thanks for having me today.
Bobby, you're spunky and you've got this nice tanned glow.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what happens when you get to go on vacation. Even property managers get to go on vacation, right?
I want to give a shout out to you and say NARPM has been an incredible resource for affiliates like Lateral too. So if you're not a part of NARPM and you're listening to this, definitely go check them out. But yeah, Bob, let's give folks kind of an idea of who you are and a little bit of background on North County Property Group.
Sure. Yeah, I have one slight correction as we start to talk about this. San Diego Business Journal didn't rate us as the best property manager. They don't do that. They have the top property management list, top property managers list. We were on that list, but they rank property managers in several different categories, one being doors. Where we rank number one is in the average property value is $1.25 million. That's tops in San Diego County. No one's even close to it. So we have the highest average property value of any property management company here in San Diego. So, that tells you a little bit about our portfolio. Lots of times when I go to NARPM events or when I meet someone like you, Ethan, they might ask, well, how many doors do you have? I kind of hate that question, to be honest, because to me, it's not so much about how many doors you have. It's about how much you can earn in terms of property management fees or gross profit off of each property. And so we have, since the very beginning, we've focused and targeted the higher end of the market, and that's part of our strategy. I think that's one reason we continue to make these lists year after year and kind of have that top ranking.
Well, maybe you can answer this question because I'm curious. Is there something about the type of properties you're bringing into the company that make it different when you're looking to get positive reviews? Because 4.8 out of 5 stars is incredible.
Yeah, it could be. When I started the company, San Diego County is a huge area to cover, right? And when I started the company, this goes back 20 years now, I live in Del Mar, which is part of, if anybody's familiar with San Diego County, North County Coastal. And so I didn't necessarily want to be driving out to East County and all around. And at the time when I started the company 20 years ago, it was just me. So I focused on the I-5, Interstate 5 corridor of North County, San Diego, right along the coast between Del Mar and Oceanside. And that's a pretty affluent area. There are a lot of coastal properties that kind of fit our niche. And, really high net worth individuals own those homes. And I think they appreciate the services that we bring. And that's been kind of one of my philosophies. If you're going to jump into this business, you got to go all in and you have to bring it, in terms of your customer service. And I think that's one of the ways we've been able to achieve our positive ratings. And I gotta tell you, I know you're not supposed to solicit reviews necessarily or petition to have them come in, but
Mhm.
I always tell my team, hey, if somebody gives you a compliment or says nice job in an email or conversation, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, it would make my day if you would go to Google and put that in writing, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And we have the little thumbs up and the thumbs down icons on our emails, right? On our email
Yeah.
signatures. And so we encourage it, but it's not like we go out soliciting them. But yeah, you're right. We've had a pretty good record with our reviews. What's interesting that I find is that the negative reviews, people also really appreciate, because some of the things people say about us are kind of viewed by the public as being ridiculous. And if we can answer those negative reviews and respond in a level-headed way that the consumer or our potential clients can relate to and understand,
Mm.
it goes a long way towards building trust. You'd be amazed. Sometimes we'll go in on new client meetings and they'll say, God, I read that review and your response to it was so great, so level-headed, so professional. Good on you. I can't believe that. So I think sometimes we get upset when we get a negative review, but it's a good opportunity to show people who are kind of watching your reviews how you handle yourself, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in a not so great situation.
Who on your team handles the follow-up to those negative reviews?
Who? I do, personally. Yeah.
So you're personally going on to Google or Facebook or wherever it is and
No question about it. And it usually starts something like, wow, I'm disappointed. We have a discrepancy in our perspective on this. However, and then I kind of go into why we view things a little bit differently. So yeah, that's a really important part of the social media aspects and making sure you get positive reviews. I did want to point out too that since we started the company focusing on North County, we've now expanded into San Diego County as a whole. We have another office. Our headquarters is in Del Mar still. We have another office that's a satellite office in what's known as the Golden Triangle area of San Diego, which is where the several freeways converge and forms this triangle. So it's kind of mid-city area of San Diego County.
Let's maybe come back to your background in the company. Let's rewind 20 years. Tell us a little bit about you and how you even got into property management.
Oh man. Well, that's a good story if we have time. It's one that I like to tell because it does reveal a little bit about me, and there's a little vulnerability in here too. So I hope that's cool. Yeah. So for those who don't know me, I'm a former Silicon Valley chief marketing officer. So I can relate to what you're trying to do, Ethan. I worked for a number of different startups in Silicon Valley. I lived in Los Gatos, loved it on the peninsula, helped two companies go through public offering. Neither exist anymore. One was bought by Intel. The other was kind of split up between Xerox and Adobe.
So this was like around the .com.
Yes. Yeah. Late 90s, right? 20, more than 20. Yeah. More than 20, a little more than 20 years ago. And I loved it. My career was, I was kind of chasing the next great idea, but I had this personal situation that was tugging at my heart. I still do have them, 3 kids from a previous marriage that were all kind of middle school age at the time. And it was just really tugging at my heart. They were here in San Diego. And so I was flying back and forth, trying to live in 2 different cities, kind of commuting. And that was difficult to have a social life. And I just found myself not being as into it in Silicon Valley as I should, because I had this thing, this gap in my life and tugging at my heart, wanting me to come back to San Diego. So I made a really difficult choice. I decided to jump off the Silicon Valley treadmill, move back to San Diego. Looking back on it, I can tell you it was the best decision I ever made, but didn't really know what I was going to do. Didn't necessarily have a job. It was just like, hey, I got to go do this. Fortunately, financially, I was in a position to make that happen. And so I landed in San Diego. I had some of my own rental properties. I was doing some consulting, looked around for a property management company, couldn't find anybody that I could trust. For the most part, I thought that they were all archaic. And mind you, this goes back 20 years, right? Using sticky notes and notepads and Excel spreadsheets and stuff.
And of course, coming from Silicon Valley.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. So I just couldn't relate at all. So I decided to self-manage. And I'd got my real estate license like when I graduated from college. So I was licensed. And then I had some friends along the way ask, "Hey, will you manage my property?" And to do this legally, I got to get my broker's license. So I got my broker. And this all started like in my bedroom with a Schedule E sole proprietorship, right? So
Yeah.
nothing fancy at all, but like kind of one by one, I started doing this for friends. And then I guess it was around 2011. I'm like, okay, I really like this. I have a passion for properties. I always liked high tech, but it just, there was something about it I couldn't really always sink my teeth into. And this I had a passion for. I like working with people. The collaborative aspects of it are still incredible and helping people solve their problems. So I decided, you know what, I'm all in on this. And, since that time, I've built the company brick by brick and all through organic growth. I've never purchased a portfolio, have never purchased any other properties. And here we are today, one of the top companies in San Diego County. By the way, one of those kids I told you about that was in grade school, middle school, now works for me. He's our director of property operations, Bob Preston. He's killing it. So,
So, yeah.
another benefit for having moved back to
I had the awesome opportunity of meeting Brett too when
That's
we
right.
met at
Yeah.
Cal Narpum.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I appreciate the vulnerability too, to give us kind of a look behind the curtain at what was going on in your life at that time.
Well, I got to tell you, sometimes when I tell the story, I get a little emotional. So it's, I was having this great career, but, sometimes there are things more important than how much money you're making or what position you're in or where you are in your career. And that was a crossroad of my life. And, I obviously made the right decision. And now I love what I do. I mean, I come to work every day. I have the energy to get up and come in and hit it hard, and just love what I'm doing.
I'm just curious about this journey. Once you started building the company, did you always love it, or was there sort of like this precipice where you hit a point and said, now I love it?
Wow. Okay. You're digging for more vulnerability here, aren't you, Ethan? I think that's what you're
Well, I'll give you some more. Part of the reason I'm
no,
asking is to
I'm just kind of kidding.
I do want to understand more of like, I am curious personally how you were feeling as this grew, but I'm also curious if there were certain types of hurdles and obstacles that you maybe struggled to overcome as you built one of the best property management companies in San Diego.
Absolutely. When I was in Silicon Valley, I was given this book, and this book's like 25 years old. It's called Built to Last.
Mm.
And it was given to me by my boss at the time. It's by two Stanford GSM professors, James Collin and Jerry Porras. And the principle in the book is that strong companies build themselves based on some timeless principles, right? So when I was starting up, I just felt that it was important to start the company based on some guiding principles, core values, and kind of doing things the right way. Even though I was a startup, self-funded, didn't have a lot of money, just felt that it was an important part of running a company. So if I was going to do it, I was going to do it the right way. And there were times when, we hit the wall, or I was doing things in a way that I felt was correct or in best practices in property management, but it wasn't having an impact on our business. And so it gets kind of frustrating, right? Anybody who's started their own company, I'm sure you've been through this yourself. You're sort of doing all these things, and sometimes you feel like you're in the hamster wheel, churning, nothing's happening. Then all of a sudden, boom, you take this jump, right? And all that work that we put in, those hurdles you called it, all of a sudden, whoa, okay, wait a minute. Now something different has happened. We've taken this step. So I kind of equate starting any company, including a property management company, is climbing a flight of stairs, right? You sort of go for a while, you may hit a wall, you take this jump, a quantum leap, if you will. Sometimes you're jumping 2-3 stairs, but you're going to a different level. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in building the business is that when you do that, when you take these jumps or these leaps, or you skip a couple steps, then things can break. Right?
Yeah.
So these processes, these legacy ways of doing things no longer are working. And as the CEO, I can look around the office, or I can just sense it. Either people not working as efficiently, or maybe the level of customer service has dropped. Like when you and I talk, when you were on my podcast, we were talking about SLAs, right? the SLA dropped or things happen, you can start to sense it. And then that's the time where you have to dig in and say, okay, I've got to reinvest in some processes here, or maybe some new tools, some technologies that will help us kind of make that next next hurdle to that next step, if you will. So hopefully that makes sense.
I think that the tough part with it, you gather all this industry knowledge, you look at like best practices, and over time, the best practices become standard practice. And what was the best loses its competitive edge, right? Because in a way it becomes standard. And in a way, it sounds, you're talking a little bit of that. You get into these grooves, you develop these processes, but then over time, as you're looking at things, you're like, why does it feel like now all of a sudden we've stagnated a little bit? Why aren't we continuing to level up? Were there any like plateaus you hit that felt extraordinarily hard to overcome, or that you felt maybe were actually like preventing you from even being able to grow the business or like accumulate positive reviews?
I don't think there was any extended period of time, but there were so many instances of, okay, wow, time to adjust, time to make some changes, that I can't even count them. I would say that probably the biggest had to do with staffing and personnel, and realizing that the people that I had hired as the company grew were not necessarily the same people that were going to get me to that next, over that next hurdle, up that next step. Some people and their human nature don't like change. Well, I'm all about change. I'm growing a business, and to grow a business, one thing's constant, and that's change, the old adage. And so, especially in this business where you're being offered, like yourself from Latchel, you're one of our NARPM affiliates, there are these plethora of solutions and technologies and things that people can take advantage of to make your company more efficient. But every time you introduce one, there's change in the process and the way you do things in the company, and people have to learn that. There's some people who love that, who adapt to it quickly, are very capable, boom, on to the next thing. Oh my God, this is wonderful. This is the best thing. And there are other people that are like, I don't want to change using my sticky notes and my Excel spreadsheet, right? So it's interesting. I think those are probably the biggest hurdles had to do with personnel, dealing with that. And then, in some cases, the need to, I guess, let people go that I knew couldn't kind of carry the weight kind of up to that next level.
One thing I'm hearing and reading between the lines here. So the first thing, the thing you said about change, how you're always looking to change to improve. We have like a little motto we say at Latchel. We just say you can't get better by staying the same. It kind of means the equivalent thing, right? If you don't try new things, you're always going to stay the same. But what I'm kind of reading between the lines, and it seems like it's almost part of your personality and your kind of entrepreneurial nature, that you have this like hunger about you, like this, maybe you could call it like an ambition, that if you're always looking to, where can I make changes to improve this? How can I get, move this lever up? Where can I level this up? You obviously have like this motivation and hunger to continue driving your business forward. I think in property management, especially, that's hard to maintain that level of motivation and hunger, because property management can be incredibly difficult. So I'm curious if you have any like tips or thoughts just for listeners on how to maintain that level of like ambition and hunger when things get tough.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I'm a pretty motivated guy. I always have been. I put my all into it. And I think one of the hard things for me is not setting the expectations too high for my staff, because of the way I am. I expect everybody should be that way, damn it, and that's not always the case. So I guess my tip, if I had it, is just, start by doing the right thing. And I go back to that Built to Last book, doing the things that in the long run are going to get your company to where you want to be. I remember I think it was 2013 2012, we finally had enough momentum and enough properties where I could open an office and start hiring employees. And the tenant before us had wallpapered the room that became my office with this whiteboard wallpaper, that you can write on with eraser marks. And I looked in there and I'm like, oh my God, so a guy who's motivated like I am, has an active mind and loves to write things down. I mean, I went nuts, right? This whole wall was just covered at that point in time with all the things that I wanted to accomplish at the company. And I can remember there must have been like 25 columns, and each column had a title at the top, which was some sort of strategic initiative or area of the company that needed improvement. And then there was a numbered list down below. And as we would hit those benchmarks or accomplish that goal or implement that strategy, whatever it was, I'd take it and erase it.
Yeah.
And then there was I'm trying to recall this board. I have it burned into my mind. I have pictures of it too along the way. There's in the upper right-hand corner, there was this little area called, new ideas. And every now and then I'd get some burst of energy, or I'd this aha moment. I call them nuggets. And I'd jump up out of my desk, get out of my chair, and go to the whiteboard, and I'd write it down, and then eventually it would be added to one of the columns, in the list. I was constantly redoing it. And so, that was my driving force for about over 2 years. And eventually the whiteboard came down to a couple pages in a notebook. And then today it's I'm still a list guy, but I can keep it manageable in a list of maybe 10 to 20 items that I keep just by sending myself a refreshed email every day, right? The things that I got done. Talk to Ethan today, I could check that one off the list, right? So delay that and I forward it to myself. And so every morning I have a list, and that keeps me, when I get up, I look at the list. I always clear out my inbox, and then boom, I'm on to the next day. So nice. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I find like a lot of the best entrepreneurs have that kind of like task list and zero inbox mentality, because it allows you to keep your focus on most important things. And especially if you can clear out all the clutter, like your inbox, for example, which can often be the biggest clutter, or your social media messages, which for a lot of people tends to be like the mental clutter. You can focus down on that task list and hit the most important things. And speaking on most important things, I'm curious if, in your opinion, there are factors that you think were more important in contributing to you being named one of the best management companies in San Diego, and also how you've maintained there for 5 years.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the core values and the demand for excellence, that we have at the company. And, it's funny, I was thinking about this before. I printed it out here so I can refer to it if I need to. I was thinking about this because there's a lot of talk about company culture. Oh, they've got a great company culture. And what I found was, despite having what I call good guiding principles and strong values that I've established for the company, as a CEO, you can't snap your fingers and expect that to be the company culture. People may try, people who don't get it are going to be faking. And so it's only through the gradual course of time of having that, having those core values and principles stand the test of time, where eventually the right people are in the organization to carry that ball, right? And then once you have that sort of momentum of company culture, then anybody who comes in to interview, anybody who looks at the company, anybody who likes what they see is going to see this contagious sort of culture of customer service and service level agreement, and the expectation of responsiveness and ethics and all the things that we want to stand for. So I think that's what has helped, is having that from the very beginning, kind of that built to last mentality with the core values, the principles in place, that has allowed us to get to that level. I mean, relatively quickly. It's been a long time. It's been hard. Anybody who thinks that starting a company like this, especially in this industry, is easy, well, I got news for you. It's not. And it's gut wrenching, and it's, it's a long road, but I think we're there now. We still want to grow. And I think that's it. I think that's kind of maintaining that, and that maintenance of the core values and the culture, that's on me, right?
Yeah.
Occasionally I see it getting off course, or there's maybe some course correction. Somebody's taking the rudder a little bit in the wrong direction. That's got to be corrected, and people are watching. The staff and the employees are watching, and if that doesn't happen, then then you sort of risk losing that over the course of time.
It becomes a part of the new culture, right? If you don't keep
if you allow it, let it slip away.
Yeah.
One of the other things I did, and I think there are a lot of property management companies out there that probably also run on EOS. I don't know if you've ever heard of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a program and a system for pretty much companies at all levels, right? Startups, mid-size, large corporations. But it's a fundamental set of principles that say, hey, if you are scoring well as an organization in these 6 categories, I'm not going to go into the details of EOS, but I would encourage anybody to look at it who's wanting that sort of drive, that push to get their employees all on the same page. EOS is a great way to do that. And we take EOS surveys on a regular basis to make sure, as a group, as a leadership team and as an employee team, we're staying true to those to the EOS models and the direction, the guide that the EOS platform gives us.
Yeah, I've actually seen EOS talked a lot about in the property management mastermind group on Facebook.
Yeah, those guys are big into it. Yeah,
follow that. Let's dig into culture though, and I could spend hours talking about core values and company culture.
Yeah.
So we'll try and keep the conversation somewhat confined so we don't let it run away. But I'm curious, can you maybe share some more details on the core values that you emphasize at North County?
Yeah. I look at 4 different areas. One is, and a lot of companies have a mission statement, right? I mean, that's not uncommon to me. And I'll get to values here in a minute, because that's kind of 4th on the list. But a company mission, in my view, should stand the test of time. It should be a high level direction where, something you want to achieve. And, oh, by the way, that just happens to apply to property management in our case. For our company, our goal and what we strive for every day is to exceed our stakeholder expectations in quality and cost through positive engagement and continued improvement. So that's kind of our mission, right? That says it up front. And if you're coming in looking to join our company and you can't do that, you can't strive for continued improvement and, exceeding stakeholder expectations, then it's probably not a place you should sign up to work, right? And then our company vision, of course, is to dominate the San Diego market. No, I'm just kind of kidding, but to achieve and stay in a premier position as a top property management company in San Diego County.
Yeah.
Then I call these are kind of Bob's. We don't call them Bob's guiding principles, but I wrote them, right? They came from me, and that's just some of those built to last aspects, like always be leveraging the best business and marketing technologies. Now, I'm going to preface that by saying you have to be able to afford it. When we were small and growing, we couldn't necessarily hire Latchel because, number one, it probably didn't make sense because we were pretty small, but number 2, I'm not sure we could afford it, right?
Yeah.
But it's important to be committed to that in terms of a guiding principle. So when you hit one of those hurdles or one of those benchmarks of trying to get up to the next step, you take a look at that of, okay, what can I do to leverage? What can I do to improve efficiency? And of course, in our business, also another guiding principle of ours is financial accuracy, legal compliance, and then always be pushing on innovation and creativity. You have to do that. And not everybody in the company can be creative. I mean, that's just not the way it is. Some people are executors and that's fine, but it has to come from somewhere. And I kind of end up playing that role of, I'm the one who's like pushing everybody to be creative, to try new things, to test their boundaries, and to, constantly push to advance the company into maybe new things that make us uncomfortable, but it's the right thing to do. And then I guess the 4th thing is the company values. By the way, we have a graphic where these 4 categories are in kind of a circle, and it surrounds our stakeholders, who I consider to be our property owner clients, our tenants, and also our vendors that we work with on a daily basis. And the company values are surrounding a customer first attitude, always, every day, transparent communications, accountability and follow through, high professional and ethical standards, teamwork and collaboration. And I think one of the most important things for company culture is having a trustworthy and respectful environment. If you can't trust your teammates, then you're going to have a political environment, and you have to be able to trust your staff and your teammates. And when I spot people who aren't maybe following through like they should, or they're not making the grade in terms of the job that they sit in, and one of the first things I tell them is, hey, look, if I can see it, don't you think your teammates are noticing this? you know if you think that people aren't noticing that, oh, you skipped that meeting, or you didn't call in on time for the Zoom call, or that, yeah, you came to that meeting but you didn't have much energy because you were hungover, you don't think people are noticing that stuff? You got yeah. So it's kind of interesting, but so those are the things in terms of company values that I try to build on, and that's where we're at. And then the objective, we always have objectives, right?
Mhm.
These are kind of the outcomes we strive for, which of course is to maximize the value and profit for our clients, right? That's the bottom line. Is it's great to have all these values and guiding principles and things we strive for, but if you're not achieving your objective for your clients, then it's all for naught.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's kind of interesting because you look at all these companies and in any industry, and a lot of the fundamentals of like the core values, well, at least in companies that document these things and publish them and share with the team, they're written differently, and they cover like a breadth of topics, but a lot of the fundamentals I see like as recurring. Part of the reason what made me think of this is I'm thinking about Latchel's core principles and how aligned they are with yours. Things like being obsessed about customers, customers first.
Yeah.
We have one that kind of matches yours in terms of transparency, but we call it eliminating ambiguity.
I like that. I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
I think you mentioned teamwork and building trust, and we have the same one, earning trust with teammates, but we also mean earn trust with customers. And you mentioned this earlier, but I think where a lot of companies fail is they come up with the core values, they publish them, and they think that's my company culture. There's a great book that Ben Horowitz recently published called What You Do Is Who You Are. And I think the thing that most entrepreneurs and founders forget is it's up to you, right? So Bob, it's up to you to set the culture of North County. It's up to me to set the culture of Latchel, not by just posting some core values, but we actually need to live them, and we need to do them every day, and we need the employees to do them too. So I'm wondering, like, are there certain things that I know a lot of this stuff I think tends to be done unconsciously, which is the hard part about it. But are there any things that you've intentionally like brought to the surface as things you regularly do to help reinforce that culture that maybe any listeners can model?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think we have a good culture here at the company. But I'm not sure it's because of me. I mean, I think there's a need for it to come from the top. But like I kind of said earlier, you can't just write a bunch of things down and put it up on a poster in your office and expect that your employees are going to be able to recite it by gunpoint. I mean, it's got to be something that they absorb, that they live, and that they get over time. And a lot of that absorption or osmosis, whatever you want to call it, comes from the guy who's leading the company. So I do take responsibility for that. And when we've hit times when I haven't felt the culture was right, then I really take that to heart. So there are some things that I believe in. We have a company staff meeting every Friday. The entire company comes in. It's very transparent. People are able to ask any question they want without criticism. It's an open environment, and I think that develops that kind of sense of trust and feeling that they're a part of going somewhere. I have quarterly kickoff meetings, one-on-ones with every single team member on a weekly basis. So this is a mandate within my company. I do it with my team. Anybody who has direct reports is required to have one-on-ones. And so those are some of the cultural things we've built in that allow people to buy in, I guess, and also sets the expectation that we're going to delegate. and that I expect people to do what they say they're going to do and complete their assignments. And okay, hey, we're giving you these actionable goals for the quarter. That's part of kind of the one-on-one process in the quarterly meetings, is to set actions. In EOS speak, they're called rocks, right? So everybody has rocks, and there's an accountability chart. So this all kind of comes from the EOS model, but that builds this culture, of no politics. Everybody knows what the other person's job is, right? And so it's really important for you to do your job, whatever that role is, Ethan, so that the guy who's sitting across the aisle from you, whatever his job is, they know that they can count on you. And then we report back every week at our company meeting. We're kind of going around the table and everybody's giving a report. So it's a very Silicon Valley like environment, I think. I mean, I'm certain you guys probably adopt some of those things, and came from my experience during Silicon Valley. But I'm amazed how many companies and how many entrepreneurs still don't have that sort of open kimono approach within their company.
Yeah, I think in like the tech world, it would be like a daily stand up or a weekly kickoff or a weekly retrospective, these types of things.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Funny, because then COVID hit, right? And I still remember we had our last in-person company staff meeting on Friday the 13th in March. And
it's like a bad omen.
I know, right? COVID was starting to raise its ugly head, but we were all looking at each other going, okay. At that time, people were still kind of saying, hey, the safest place to be during this pandemic is working for a small company. So we were kind of looking at each other. Okay, we, coming back on Monday, and everyone was, yeah, it's cool. And then I remember going home that night, not sleeping. And then, the shit kind of hit the fan, right? Gavin Newsom, our governor, started announcing that he was, closing bars, and this was happening, and this was happening, and he was shutting down. San Francisco shut down. I think your city was probably one of the first, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just over the weekend going, oh my God, I cannot ask the people to come back in on Monday, right? And so I spent all of Sunday writing all of the remote work policies, and I'd never thought remote work in this line of business could work, and I was never a big fan of it. Well, now we've proven it, we can do it. But yeah, so I just like, okay, got to jump in on this, make this happen. Here's what every person has to do by Monday, and be on the Zoom call at 9 a.m. Right. So got to download our VoIP app onto your cell phone, got to make sure it's on your desktop. You've got to, have access to Microsoft Outlook in all forms so you can do that remotely. All of the apps and, Latchel, right? Got to make sure you got that bookmark, all the other Tenant Turner, Appfolio, all the things we deal with. Mm-hmm. And then we started having daily Zoom calls every day, because I'm like, all right, I want people up and at it by no later than 9 o'clock. And that was an interesting cultural adjustment right there. And people liked it. It's kind of like you said, it's kind of like the check-in or the morning huddle or the squawk box call, whatever you want to call it. And we could just kind of talk openly. Hey, what's going on? Any new problems? Go get them, ready, break. And it was, typically would only last 15, 20 minutes.
Are you still remote, or are you back in the office now?
Well, some of us are back in the office, distancing appropriately. I would say personally, I'm about 50-50. I was kind of fortunate in that my wife is a professor at San Diego State. And so her semester for the spring ended in mid-May. So I've kind of had control of the home office space all of May, June, July. And now we're getting into the time when she goes back to school, and she's going to be all remote. So all of her classes, everything's going to be remote. So I'm starting to come back in and work at the office. And, there's still the need to come in, pick up keys, do some of those kind of things. It just can't be done from home. But for the most part, I would say most of us are working remotely.
Do you think you'll continue that?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I mean, that's fascinating. My lease is up next June. And it's going to be a fascinating discussion with the landlord, because do we need this bright, shiny office? We got a pretty cool office here. Do I need to have this overhead in my business? Or do I need just a smaller office with little, hoteling, I think is the term for it, where you have these little stand-up pedestals where people could come in with their notebook and set up, plug in, use the printer if they need to, right? Mm-hmm. And then maybe a conference room. for a meeting if you need to meet with a customer. Otherwise, everybody's working remotely. So these are some decisions that are not unique to North County Property Group. I'm sure a lot of companies around the world are wondering, wonder if we really need an office, or could we just run this company remotely for the rest, for the foreseeable future. And I think a lot of it is going to depend upon how commercial real estate landlords, how they respond,
how they handle it. Yeah. To a certain extent, I think the interesting thing about going remote is a lot of the principles that you need to build a core company that's located in one spot are the same principles to run effectively remote.
Yeah.
And so if you've built the right processes for your company and then you're going remote, that transition tends to be a lot easier. So if you have the right communication channels in place, if you're like documenting and knowledge sharing, doing your stand-ups in the appropriate ways, probably feels like less of a jump. I'm curious for you guys, did that translate?
Yes, I think it's a good point. And it did translate because we've got good people and people who want to do their job. And we're having we've stopped doing the daily meetings now. We did that for about 3 months. And I think it was in June, I finally said, hey, this seems overkill. We don't need to make everybody connect. And then it's like, anything new? No, not really. Is everybody's doing their job. I think one of the biggest benefits was for me, because, in the office, I would come in every day and, 7 to 7 kind of guy. And I have the front of my office is glass, so I can see pretty much what's going on everywhere. And, this anxiety is like, God, are people really going to be working as hard remotely as they did when they were in the office? What are they going to be doing? Are they going to be not getting up and getting to work until 10 o'clock in the morning? Like, these anxieties crept in right away. And it was one of the reasons why I was always not really in favor of allowing someone to work remotely. But seeing how the staff has responded, it's just taken that anxiety off of my shoulders. And now it's more restful for me because I know people are going to do their job. And what do I care if they're doing it at midnight or if they're doing it at 9 a.m, when that was kind of typically when they were expected to be at the office. It really doesn't matter. And so this is one of the ahas that has kind of come into my way of thinking, and it's really changed the way I look at things moving forward, including, kind of the aspects about the office.
Yeah, I think in some ways too, when you make that remote transition, or just if you're remote in general, it certainly can expose the folks that otherwise you may not have caught as bad culture fit.
Yeah.
That's at least by the experience at Latchel, is that by being remote, it sort of puts folks into a culture pressure cooker in a lot of ways. And it's much faster to see those people that aren't quite cut out for that type of environment. So I don't know what your experience was there, if you want to talk on that.
Well, I mean, we have a small company. We only have 8 people, right? So it's not like a large company that always, like Google says, okay, we're all going to be working remotely. And, there may be some angst that people are missing, sort of that, okay, I kind of like walking into the coffee room and seeing everybody and seeing the guy from accounting that I never get to see. And now that they're remote, they don't really ever get that chance.
Yeah.
We were seeing each other on a daily basis, and we still do, either, through Zoom or through our conference calls, and not every day anymore. But so it's a little bit different. And like our company meetings, everybody attends. So it's not like there's a small team and then that team has people that report to them, and it kind of cascades down the hierarchy. We're just all one big, team and family. And so I think it's reduced some of that. But I tell you, the one thing about doing the daily stand-up is that those questions that I might sometimes ask on a one-on-one, when we're doing the 9 o'clock daily meetings, those sort of get asked in front of everybody. Right. And so sometimes I know the team didn't like that, but after a while they adapted to it. Like, hey, better have that done and ready, because Bob's going to ask you, And it's not meant to put people on the spot or put people on trial, but it's just like, hey, you said you're going to do this, so come on, give us a status. And so that's been a little different too. I think people have responded to that pretty nicely, though.
Great. So I want to get to two other items, because I know we've only got 15 minutes left here. First, I want to come back to something you had talked about earlier. You talked about the importance you place on reviews, particularly like you personally responding to bad reviews. We have learning more about your company's culture. I can see why your reviews are as powerful as they are. 4.8 out of 5 stars is not easy, especially for this industry. Every person on your team that does any kind of interaction with, your stakeholders has to be doing an A+ job for you to be getting positive reviews like that. So I'm curious, from your perspective, can you just talk about the importance that you place on your online reviews and why it matters?
Well, there are all the stats out there that say that a lot of consumers, whether it's in our industry or whether you're looking for the best, burrito in town or whatever it is, place a lot of weight on online reviews. So I think it's really important. And then in a business like ours where we're trying to rank on Google, I mean, there's some other subtle reasons for doing it, right? Because you want to get a lot of reviews so that Google pays attention to you and gives you a better organic ranking. So there are some other things like that, but they're just really important to me. I think more even than your Google ranking and showing other people who are potential clients what you can do. I think it's a real pat on the back when we get a good review for our team, And so I mentioned earlier that I'm not bashful. If someone says, "Hey, your guy, Jacob or Brett or, whoever did a really good job," and I'm not bashful about, "Hey, what would make their day, put a skip in their step? If you went on Google and you told them that in a review, would you be willing to take a couple of minutes to do that?" So I do that all the time. Right. And usually it's like, "Yeah, really? That would make a difference for you guys?" Oh, absolutely. And not just for the online presence, but for that individual.
Yeah.
To be called out, online and get some ink, that's a big deal. So those things are really important as well. I think more recently we've tried to consolidate where we're trying to get good reviews too. I mean, it can get kind of crazy. There's Facebook, there's all these different places. But for the most part, we're focused on Google. Yelp kicks in every now and then. But it's it's a really important thing. And by the way, I respond to all reviews, right? Not just the bad ones. I respond to the good ones too, because oftentimes, especially now, it used to be that I knew every single owner in our portfolio personally because I was the one bringing them on.
Yeah.
All that business development, going face to face with clients in the early days, that was all me. So, but today that's only now probably 20% of our portfolio because we've grown so much, and my son Brett is doing a better job at biz dev than I ever did. So it's a way for when we do get a good review from a tenant or an owner or a vendor or somebody, it's a way for me as a CEO to kind of have some indirect FaceTime with somebody, if you will. Say, "Hey, thank you so much. If there's ever a time when I can help you or you need to contact somebody, here's how you can reach me." And it's been pretty effective.
Are there any tools you use that you could share with any of our listeners on how to do a better job managing those reviews and knowing when they pop up so you can leave messages? Or maybe you can just speak to how you do it.
Yeah, we use an app called Grade Us, and it's an online app. And it's, we can put links on our website. We can put the little icons. It's not uncommon. You see the little icons, the frowny face or the smiley face and the email signature. Ours happen to be thumbs up, thumbs down. And just encourage people to click through. And if they click on the thumbs up, then it takes them to whichever platform they're accustomed to for leaving a review, and we get notified. And that's one way to do it. And there are some other tools within there too, in terms of writing people like, "Hey, thank you so much," like kind of like an autoresponder type technology that sends them like if we know who that person is and what their email is, it kind of can contact them. But there's nothing like that personal response in the platform, like on Google, where they left their review. I think that has the biggest impact.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to get into, before we wrap up, a little bit more on what you said at the very beginning of the show on how you focus on the revenue driving like per unit. And what matters a lot is profitability over just number of doors. Before I just jump right into that and start asking you about that piece, I just want to ask one other question on creating a competitive edge. I think for any management company in a large market, doesn't matter where you are in the country, um, especially startup management companies, imagining yourself getting to the point of being rated, one of the top management companies in that region is probably a daunting task. But what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs in property management to help them create that competitive edge and grow it and establish some market dominance?
Well, there's philosophy and then there's tactics and strategies, right? My philosophy, I think I've kind of made pretty clear, that's build your business to last with best practices in mind and stick to it, right? Do run your company and do the right thing. And let me give you an example. So in the very early days, I'm like, okay, well, I want a social media presence. And I had this accountant who was working for me. He's like, have you ever gotten a new client off of social media? And I'm kind of like, well, I don't know, but I don't care, because to be relevant, you kind of need to be in social media. And then, oh, by the way, 5 years from now, it'll help establish our domain authority. Right. So I think those are kind of just one really good example of doing the right thing and sticking with it, making yourself relevant, continue to push on these little buttons and levers that are going to, over the course of time, continue to increase your exposure, and doing the right thing, build your reputation. It doesn't come easy. It comes through kind of that domain authority, through building that reputation locally by word of mouth, and all the little things that you do every single day. And it's hard, right? It's really, really hard. Stick with it, stay the course, and don't let up. Don't compromise. I mean, I guess that's kind of my philosophy and the way we've been able to do it. Sorry, go ahead. I think you're
going I was just going to say, I think what I love about what you're saying, you're emphasizing in some ways the qualitative over the immediate quantitative value, which is like could take years to build a social media presence. And there's going to be a whole school of thought that's like, well, look at the numbers every couple of weeks. Are you driving business through social media? Then why are you spending your time on something not driving business?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So you have to be realistic about it.
But there's the whole qualitative element of, deep down, you as that business owner, what's right. And while the numbers might not show it every 2 weeks, that to build a strong company, qualitatively, you need to have that presence. And there's certain things you need to do that won't be scalable, that will be hard, that will take more of your time than they seem worth. But these things kind of like add up, right? Like, how long did it take for your social media posts and everything to add up until it actually did help your business and it actually mattered, right?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but every now and then when I'm checking out a company, particularly startups or people in this business, I'll go to their blog, and here we are in August, and if I see they haven't made a blog post since March of 2019, I'm kind of like, wow, man, that's not really sticking with it, and that just gives me this sort of indication that somebody's not somebody's asleep behind the wheel, I guess. And social media is kind of the same way. I mean, you've got to sort of stick to it. And lo and behold, along the way, okay, whether it was Panda or one of the Google releases, okay, all of a sudden they brought social media influence and your authority within social media kind of into their algorithm. So lo and behold, it paid off, right? And so I think that's another reason why we do it today. One other thing, I was at NARPM. I think it was the broker owner last year in Las Vegas. I don't know if you happen to be there, Ethan. And there was a speaker who talked about kind of giving back. And that was one of those nuggets that I took away from a NARPM event where I said, we got to start doing this. And I think the broker owner, I think it was in October. I can't really remember. But anyway, I came back and we formulated a corporate responsibility program for a philanthropic cause. And now we've got and it's not necessarily going to lead directly to improving the company or getting new business. It's just the right thing to do. It is a pretty darn cool talking point too, that for every new property we bring on, we commit, $100 to what's called NCPG Cares, which then has this fund that we allocate out to different charities, either maybe taking care of our own tenants who have been hurt by COVID-19. We use Habitat for Humanity for volunteering our time and also donating, and other philanthropies around San Diego County. But it's giving back to the county. It feels good. It's the right thing to do. And I'm a believer that those kind of initiatives within a company, they kind of bleed out so people can feel them, when they call us, when they get to know us. And we talk about it in our pitch. By the way, hey, here's who we are. This is part of our philosophy, our culture, is that we give back to our community. We do what we can. So I think that's kind of cool too.
So much of what you're saying, I love how much of what you're talking about in this this podcast we're doing here is about the things you do that actually motivate and charge the other people in your company. Because like the program you're talking about right now, that it's not just about like you Bob feeling good about what you're doing, but it's something that makes all the employees feel amazing about working for you in North County. The same thing on the culture values. It's about how do you have people feeling good about what they're doing every day. Same with like the focus on delivering great service. And I think it's really underrated that entrepreneurs like probably don't often enough think about what am I doing to actually recharge my team, the people I bring into the company, and really make it so they love what they do and they feel like what they do makes a difference. Yeah. When you've peppered in all these things just all over your business to do that for anyone working for you.
Sometimes I feel like we don't do enough, but I hear what other companies are doing. Sometimes, like we're not a big t-shirt company. No, I found that with t-shirts, the women in the company will never wear them. So kind of what's the point?
Right.
So, I'm just saying, so I have one, my North County Property Group shirt, but it's kind of funny. So
yeah,
t-shirts aren't a big deal here.
I mean, you can do it in so many ways, right?
I know, right?
So before we, I know we only have a couple of minutes here, so I think maybe a good topic to wrap on is coming back to what you actually said at the very beginning. You talked about, people will often ask how many doors do you have, as if that's a meaningful measure of like the business's success. But the real measure of success is the service you're delivering and how, I'll just say quantitatively efficient the business is in terms of, well, how much do you actually make in terms of the business model per door? That's a far better indicator of how healthy and robust your company is. Maybe you can speak to, just in the final few minutes here, about certain decisions maybe you've made to help you actually gear the company toward running efficiently and having a high kind of per door profitability over just quantity of doors.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And am I on a clock here, or can you flow over a little bit?
Yeah, we can flow over.
Okay, yeah. So in the early days of the business, we pretty much took on anything. I mean, I'll just admit it, right? And I learned very quickly that was a bad idea. We had an agent that worked for us that will go unnamed. I'll just refer to her as agent. And I gave her kind of the keys to the Ferrari and I said, go get us business. I can afford you all these leads, go get them. And she brought in a lot of business. Unfortunately, the vast majority were pretty much C kind of properties and not so great owners, that didn't really fit with my philosophy of what I wanted the company to represent. And, oh, by the way, those, if you're familiar with the Boston Consulting Group, matrix, you've got your stars, you've got your cash cows, you've got your question marks, and you've got your dogs. So, all of a sudden, lo and behold, we had some dogs, and the dogs were taking up, it's 80-20 rule. They were 20% of the properties were taking up 80% of our time, either with owners who didn't get it, who weren't willing to invest in their properties or do the right thing there, or with tenants who were just troublemakers and caused problems and missed rent and stuff like that. So I corrected that really early on within the first year of the company. We still have a couple of those lingering, but for the most part, that was when I formulated the strategy. Okay, we're going towards a different market, and you've got to meet our expectations if you're an owner to be accepted in as a client, and that's really paid off because we're not the biggest company in town in terms of doors, but as I mentioned, we are, at the top of the list in terms of the average value of a property in our portfolio. And we're pretty proud about that. Right. And that tells our audience and our target market that high net worth individuals who have expensive homes are comfortable with us managing their properties because of our customer service level. And it also, is clear that we're used to dealing with high net worth tenants. I mean, that's not always easy, right? And so that's another big aspect of that kind of target market. But those were some tough lessons in the very beginning. And so we still have a couple in our property, and I'll just call her Agent X. They're called Agent X properties, right? So those are the ones we refer to them by name. And we still have a couple in the inventory, but for the most part, the challenging ones now for the most part in our portfolio tend to be the question marks, right? That's where you have this beautiful property and we're making good profitability from it, but maybe, the owner isn't such a great, maybe the owner isn't so great, or there's something that kind of puts it into this question mark. And then of course, you're all shooting for the cash cows and the stars, but that's kind of how we look at it. So we rate all of our properties, we rate our owners, and we track it. And,
is this like part of a like an interview process to bring in a customer? Or is this more after you bring them in and you deciding like, do we keep moving forward with them, or do we fire our owner?
Right. I think we all want to be dealing with A players, whether it's an A property or what we call an A owner, and people who get us, who come to us because of what we stand for, and people who are going to be cooperative with us and let us do our job. Don't butt in on every little decision that needs to be made. That's the ideal client. So, we get we get the red flags when somebody's not going to be like that right away during maybe the upfront meeting. Sometimes it takes a little while to come out. Sometimes something happens during the course of the relationship, which is upsetting to someone. And, that's sometimes tough to turn around. So we have resigned, from properties as well. Or house at times, but that's always challenging to do. And sometimes sometimes clients just can't get happy with us. Very rarely does that happen.
Bob, I feel like we could go on for hours and hours and hours on these topics. So what we might have to do is schedule like another round.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
Maybe we can let people simmer on this episode for a few months and then come back maybe end of the year, like early next year or something. That's meant to be a compliment. Thank you so much for being on the show with all the wisdom, knowledge, and expertise you're bringing. I think our listeners are going to get a lot from it. Before we wrap up, I just want to give you the opportunity, though, to let anyone listening know like where they can connect with you, or any other message you want to give to folks.
You bet. Yeah. Okay, let's start with the company. It's Bob Preston. I'll give you my email, bob@NC, as in North County, ncpropertygroup.com. That's also the website if you want to check us out, ncpropertygroup.com. And you can connect with me that way. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. We're San Diego County, California. Also, you mentioned my podcast. I'm enthused about my podcast. It's another area of passion. It's kind of my side hustle. Not that I make a lot of money from it or anything, but it's just fun to do. That's Property Management Brainstorm. You can find that on all the directories, Google, Apple, whatnot. So have a listen, download it. Had some great episodes lately. And then a little bit about Cal NARPM. If you're in California and you're a property manager and you're a member of NARPM, you're automatically a member of Cal NARPM. There are 8 also local chapters in regions, regional areas and cities around California that are also under that Cal NARPM umbrella. And that email, if you want to reach out to us, will eventually get forwarded to me through the system as info@NARPM, NARPM, California.org, not .com, NARPMCalifornia.org info. So, hey, would love it if you reach out, anybody out there. And obviously, if you can't figure out how to get a hold of me, Ethan, you can turn them on to my contact information.
Yeah, of course. You can reach out to me directly and I'll connect you with Bob if you need. Bob, thanks so much for joining us. Everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. And like Bob said, if you want to learn more about North County Property Group, you can head to www.ncpropertygroup.com, or as Bob has so graciously offered, you can email him personally at bob@ncpropertygroup.com. And just echoing what Bob said, he does host his own podcast, Property Management Brainstorm, with Bob Preston. So make sure to check that out. Before we wrap up, anyone else listening, if you're interested in more topics on property management growth and building a great business, you can also head to propertybrew.co. We do weekly newsletters, all free, where we focus on industry innovations and growth tactics. And to stay updated on our upcoming sessions, follow our Crowdcast channel at crowdcast.io/Latchel, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Latchel. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks, Bob.
See ya.